Gilead is burning, not with fire, but with secrets. And in the final episode of the Testaments, everything that was hidden finally comes to the surface. Every lie, every deal made in the dark, every sacrifice that nobody saw coming. This is the episode where the story stops holding back. If you have been watching this series and thinking you had it all figured out, episode 10 is about to prove you wrong. The ending of this episode is not just a conclusion. It is a statement about power, about survival, and about what it truly costs a woman to fight back inside a system that was built to destroy her. And at the center of all of it stands one woman who is neither fully good nor fully evil. A woman who played the cruelest game in the cruelest world and somehow came out the other side holding all the cards. This video is going to break down exactly what happened in that final episode, scene by scene. Then we are going to go deeper and talk about what it all actually means. Because the ending of the Testaments is not something you can just watch once and walk away from. There are layers underneath layers, and once you see them, you cannot unsee them. So stay with this video until the very end, because the most important part of this explanation comes last. Before we talk about the ending, we need to make sure we are all on the same page, because episode 10 does not make its full impact unless you understand how all the pieces were moving before it arrived. The Testaments tells 3 stories at the same time. You have Aunt Lydia, who is one of the most powerful women inside Gilead, and also one of the most feared. You have Agnes, a young woman who grew up inside Gilead and was raised to believe that this world was normal and right. And then you have Nicole, who was smuggled out of Gilead as a baby and grew up in Canada with a completely different life and a completely different understanding of what Gilead even is. These 3 women do not know each other at the start of the story, but the entire series is built around pulling them together. Their paths are always moving toward each other, slowly and then all at once. Aunt Lydia has been playing a long game since the very beginning. She is not just a loyal servant of Gilead. She has been quietly collecting information on every commander, every powerful man, every dirty secret that the regime has tried to bury. She has been building a file, a record of everything, and she has been waiting for the right moment to use it. Agnes has been living inside the lies of Gilead her whole life. She was told who to be, what to think, and who to marry. But somewhere deep inside her, she always felt that something was wrong. That feeling grows louder with every episode until she can no longer ignore it. By the time we reach episode 9, Agnes is no longer the quiet girl who followed the rules. She is someone who is ready to risk everything. Nicole grew up free, but she never felt complete. She always knew she came from Gilead. She always knew her mother was June Osborne, the woman who became a symbol of resistance for people all over the world. And that knowledge gave Nicole a fire inside her, a need to do something that actually mattered. By episode 9, Nicole has stopped playing it safe. She has crossed the line from observer to participant, and that is exactly where episode 10 picks all 3 of them up. At the edge, each one of them standing at the point of no return, about to make a move that will change not just their own lives, but the future of Gilead itself. The stage is set, the tension is at its absolute peak, and the final episode is ready to deliver. Nobody warned you that the final episode would hit this hard. One moment, you think you know where the story is going, and then the ground shifts completely beneath your feet. Episode 10 does not ease you in. It grabs you from the very first scene and does not let go until the last frame fades to black. The episode opens in a way that feels almost too quiet, too still, and that stillness is not peace. It is the kind of silence that sits right before something breaks. Aunt Lydia is alone in her room. No aunts around her, no commanders giving her orders, just her and her thoughts. And the look on her face tells you everything. She has made her decision. Whatever she has been planning all this time, tonight is the night it finally moves. Cut to Agnes. She is inside the walls of Archeo Hall, and she is not sleeping. She is writing. Her pen is moving fast across the page like she is afraid she might run out of time. And in a way she is, because Agnes knows that what is coming cannot be stopped now. She has crossed a line that Gilead does not forgive. She is not writing to process her feelings. She is writing because she understands that if something goes wrong, this record needs to exist. Someone needs to know the truth. Meanwhile, Nicole is on the move. She is not waiting for permission or a plan or the right moment. She is already inside the operation. She has people helping her, people who believe in what she represents, and she is using every resource she has to get to where she needs to be before the window closes. Nicole moves through this episode like someone who has finally stopped being afraid of the consequences. Then comes the moment that redefines the entire episode. Aunt Lydia makes contact. Not through a messenger, not through a hidden note. She does it directly. And what she hands over in that moment is not just information. It is a weapon. The file she has been building for years. Every secret, every crime, every name of every powerful man who thought he was untouchable inside Gilead. She places it into the hands of the one person she calculated could do the most damage with it. That single exchange is the turning point of the whole series. Because up until this moment, Aunt Lydia existed in a grey space. You were never fully sure whether she was working for Gilead or against it. Whether her cruelty was genuine loyalty or a mask she wore to survive. But this moment strips all of that away. This is her answer. This is what every sacrifice she made inside that system was quietly building toward. The scene that follows is the confrontation inside the upper levels of Gilead's power structure. Commanders who have never been challenged in their lives suddenly find themselves exposed. The information is out. It cannot be taken back. And the panic that spreads through that circle of men is almost satisfying to watch because these are men who built a world on control. And now, for the first time, they have none. Agnes and Nicole finally come face to face in this episode, and the scene between them carries the emotional weight of the entire series on its shoulders. Two sisters who were separated before they could even know each other. Two women who took completely different roads and somehow ended up at the same destination. There is no dramatic speech between them. There does not need to be. The moment speaks entirely for itself. The episode then moves through its final stretch with urgency. Every scene is shorter. Every cut is faster. The story is accelerating toward its conclusion, and you can feel it. Characters who have been circling each other all season are finally forced into the same space. Decisions are made in seconds, and not every decision leads somewhere safe. Here is the thing about the ending of episode 10 that most people miss the first time they watch it. The final scene is not really about what happens. It is about what it means. And those are two very different things. You can watch the last few minutes and understand the events on the surface. But if you stop there, you are only getting half of the story. Let us start with what the ending actually shows you on screen. Aunt Lydia does not escape Gilead. She does not run. She does not flee across the border with Agnes and Nicole. She stays. And that choice right there is the most powerful thing she does in the entire series. Because staying is not weakness. Staying is the strategy. A woman like Aunt Lydia running away from Gilead would have meant nothing. But a woman like Aunt Lydia remaining inside it, after doing what she did, after releasing everything she knew, that sends a message that no commander can silence. She chose to become the splinter that stays lodged inside the system and cannot be removed without causing more damage. Agnes and Nicole make it out. But the moment they cross that line, it does not feel like a celebration, and the show is very intentional about that. There is relief, yes, but underneath it there is grief. Agnes is leaving behind the only world she ever knew, even if that world was built on lies. Nicole is arriving at a truth about herself that she will spend the rest of her life carrying. Freedom in this story is not handed to you clean. It comes with weight. It comes with everything you had to lose to get there. Now here is where the ending gets deeper. The title of this entire story is The Testaments. And a testament is not just a will or a legal document. A testament is a witness account. It is someone saying, I was there, and this is what I saw, and I am putting it on record, so that no one can pretend it did not happen. The entire series has been building toward this idea. 3 women, 3 testimonies, 3 different angles on the same truth. And when the ending arrives, it becomes clear that the real victory in this story was never about defeating Gilead in a single dramatic moment. It was about making sure the record existed. It was about making sure the truth survived, even if the people who carried it did not. Aunt Lydia understood this before anyone else did. That is why she spent years writing everything down. That is why she was so careful and so patient. She was not waiting for a revolution. She was building an archive. And an archive is something that outlasts every regime that ever tried to burn it. The connection back to The Handmaid's Tale is impossible to ignore in this final episode. June Osborne's shadow hangs over every frame. Nicole carries her mother's blood, and her mother's stubbornness, and her mother's absolute refusal to accept the world as it is. When Nicole walks out of Gilead, she is not just saving herself. She is completing something that June started years before. The story that began with one woman refusing to disappear ends with her daughter walking into the light. That is not just closure. That is legacy. And then there is Agnes. Agnes represents something that neither June nor Nicole could represent. She is a woman who was born inside Gilead, who was shaped by it from childhood, who had every reason to stay loyal to it. And she chose truth anyway. That choice is quiet, but it is enormous, because it proves that even a system as total as Gilead cannot fully own the people it raises inside it. There will always be someone who feels the wrongness underneath the surface. There will always be someone who starts writing it down. The final image of the episode is deliberately simple. No explosions, no dramatic confrontation, just a document. Pages of testimony sitting on a table waiting to be read by the world. And in that simplicity, the show is telling you something very clear. The most dangerous thing a woman in Gilead could ever do was not fight with her hands. It was tell the truth with her words. Every great story leaves a door slightly open when it ends. Not because the writers forgot to close it, but because real life does not tie itself into a neat bow, and neither should a story that has spent its entire run telling you the truth about power. The Testament's episode 10 is generous with its conclusions, but it is also honest enough to leave certain questions sitting in the air unanswered. And those unanswered questions are not a flaw. They are the point. The biggest question the finale leaves open is what actually happens to Aunt Lydia after everything is set into motion. She stays inside Gilead. We know that. But we do not see what comes next for her. We do not see whether the commanders figure out what she did. We do not see whether she is punished or whether she is too deeply embedded in the system for anyone to touch her. And that uncertainty is completely intentional, because Aunt Lydia was never a character who could be wrapped up cleanly. She is too complicated for a clean ending. She exists in the space between monster and martyr, and the show respects that complexity enough to let her stay there. The second question that lingers is about the world outside Gilead. We know that the testimonies exist. We know they have been passed out of Gilead's walls. But what does the outside world do with them? Do they act? Do they finally move against Gilead in a meaningful way? Do governments that spent years looking the other way suddenly find themselves with no more excuses? The show does not answer this directly, but it points you toward the answer. History tells us that when the truth is documented and distributed, it eventually cannot be ignored. It may take time. It may take more sacrifice. But it moves. The third question sits closest to the heart of the story. Agnes and Nicole are free. But what kind of free are they? Agnes has to rebuild her entire identity outside of the only world she ever knew. Nicole has to figure out who she is now that the mission that defined her has been completed. Freedom is the beginning of a completely new set of problems, and the show is wise enough to acknowledge that without spelling it out. Walking out of Gilead is not the end of their story. It is the start of a much harder and much more personal one. Now for the final verdict. The Testament's episode 10 does something that very few finales manage to do. It earns its ending. Every choice in that final episode connects back to something that was planted earlier in the series. Nothing feels sudden or undeserved. The payoff for Aunt Lydia is earned because we watched her build toward it for the entire run. The payoff for Agnes and Nicole is earned because we watched them grow into women capable of making the choices they make. The emotional weight lands because the show did the work to make you care long before it asked you to feel anything. What makes this ending truly stick is the message underneath it all. This is a story about what happens when women are stripped of their voices. And the answer the show gives is not that they fight back with violence alone. The answer is that they remember, they record, they witness, they pass the truth to the next person, and the next person passes it further. And eventually, the chain of testimony becomes something that no regime can outrun. That is what the Testaments is really about. Not the fall of Gilead as a single dramatic event, but the slow and patient and deeply human act of refusing to let the truth disappear, of insisting that what happened to you happened, of writing it down even when your hands are shaking, of making sure someone somewhere knows. If this breakdown helped you see the ending in a way you had not before, then this video did exactly what it was supposed to do. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this is the kind of ending that people are going to be talking about for a long time, and your take matters. If you want more deep dives like this one on stories that actually have something to say, then make sure you are subscribed, because the next video is already in the works and it is going to hit just as hard as this. 1. The truth always finds a way out. Gilead never understood that. And that is exactly why it falls.